Hello, everybody. Welcome to the TEL Researchers series. This is actually our first HE Researchers series, and we've got the wonderful Professor Dawne Irving-Bell with us today. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now so you can see who's talking and things like that. So hi there. My name's John Brindle. I'm going to be hosting today. And I am a learning design manager at Edge Hill University, but also a student in cohort 14 of the e-research and TEL program at Lancaster University. I'd like to just quickly introduce Phil Moffat. So Phil, if you'd just like to quickly say hello to everybody.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you. Just in the background doing some recording, and I'll keep an eye on the chat for you.
Great, and it's my absolute great pleasure to introduce to you Dawne Irving-Bell. So this is a bit of a mini celebration for you, Dawne, because you've become a professor recently. And so a little bit of delayed celebration for you. And if you just like to introduce, we're going to do the format a little bit differently this one. Dawn's asked me to kind of do a bit of an interview with her. So please feel free to ask questions if you want to as well. Dawn's very happy to take questions. But first, if you'd just like to introduce yourself, Dawn, that'd be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I can do, John. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Phil. So I'm Dawn. I've recently moved into a new position at a wonderful place called BPP University. I've been there about 3.5, 4 months now. And obviously I was promoted to professor during that move. Prior to that, I worked at Edge Hill University, where John's just started work. I didn't leave because John has started, I'll make that clear. So yeah, I was a reader at Edge Hill University. I've been a reader there for about 4 years. And I completed the doctoral programme at Lancaster University, the higher education research one, in 2018. So not too long ago, and it took me, had 6 months into collation. So I think I was about 6 years. So I wanted to try to do it in 4, but part-time, you're working, you've got family commitments, and you've got to get the day job done. So 6 years it took me, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Lancaster, and I was delighted when I contacted my old supervisor, Professor Paul Ashwin, and he said, "Oh, we'll do a little piece on you getting a professorship. That's amazing, Dawn." And then obviously to be invited to speak today, thank you. It's great. And it's nice, and it's just part of that nice network. I can't speak highly enough of my time at Lancaster, the support that I got, considering it's a doctoral programme, because obviously it's your responsibility, and it's your work. It always has to be your work, but the peer mentoring the cohort as well, and just the setup and the admin support. Alison Sedgwick's amazing, and I know you've got an Alison Sedgwick co-person on the TEL one. I probably would have looked at doing the TEL researcher one, but it didn't exist when I started. They only had the higher education research one. So it'd be interesting if people on the call today have perceptions on that, and how the difference is and what the difference is, and but I think it's pretty much the same structure, isn't it? But yeah, so that's me. Well, before I was at Edge Hill, I work in learning and teaching now. So at BPP, I work in their Centre for Learning and Teaching equivalent. That's what I was doing when I left Edge Hill. But before that, my background's in teacher education. So that's where I sort of started. I started life as a graphic designer, and then I moved into secondary education teaching, which I did for about 14 years in and around schools in the northwest of England, but latterly Knowsley, which was a really privilege to work there with some of the children there, and the challenges that they have, and helping them to get a great education so that they can make a difference to their lives. So yeah, that's where I am. That's my sort of journey from graphic designer to secondary school teacher into higher education, training teachers, Centre for Learning and Teaching, and then moving to BPP recently. Yeah,
that's really interesting. So so this series, but we're not going to focus on your research. We're going to talk about, we kind of spoke earlier about how we like to focus on what makes you a researcher. So actually, I think that would be one of my first questions. How did you get into research, and how did you start researching?
So yeah, I think with my background in sort of technology and engineering, education, you know, I have an inquisitive. I like to think I'm inquisitive, and so I like to solve problems when they arise. So I think my research probably stems from that, you know, wanting to try to find out how I can make things better. If something's not quite working, how I can fix it. So that's what I used to do in my job as a graphic designer, then in schools, training teachers, you know, supporting people. And then I suppose once I moved into the Centre for Learning and Teaching and looking at learning and teaching and trying to improve that for the benefit of others, that's when it probably moved into research as we know it. So the tools changed. It wasn't fixing things physically, it was fixing things through, you know, looking at the literature, undertaking my own research, applying what I know within that context, just so that I could really, if I can find out more about the things that I'm doing, I'd like to say it makes my job easier, because it does, but it also makes me better at my job. And if I'm better at my job, I can help more people. And I think I found my thing now. You know, when you say, well, what is it that makes you tick? What is it that makes you get out of bed in the morning? Mine is making a difference to people. If I can make a difference to somebody in the day, then that's job done, and I feel better about myself. So undertaking research for me is probably an extension of that. So but you know, if I find something that works for me, and it can make my life easier and help me to do my job better, and I'm helping other people, then the natural thing to do is disseminate that thing that I know that is working, and then I can help more people. So if I take it back to when I was in school as a teacher, I can make a difference for my kids that are sat in front of me. And it was only when I started to train teachers that I realised I could multiply that, you know. And then obviously when you go into another job in higher education and you're teaching the lecturers to teach their teachers to teach their students, you can have a bigger impact with doing something. So that's sort of probably where I started with working out for me that research, how I could use it and why I'm, I think, passionate about it, you know. And one thing I have learned along my journey is, because I'm a practical person, doing research to solve a problem, that's one thing I really did get stuck on when I was doing my doctorate, because your research is not always about solving a problem. Sometimes it's just about doing the research. So I thought I'd probably just make that point as well, because that still gets me sometimes now, because you can't solve everything. If you can just take one small piece of what you're doing to make a difference somewhere along the line, then that's okay. You know, we can't solve everything. And funnily enough, I mean, my niece will kill me now, but I was helping my niece to do a small-scale research project for her level 5 nursing qualification the other day, and it had to be on COVID, around patient waiting times. And she's like, but the government have done all this, spent all this money, and there's all these big studies and that. And the question at the end, she had to frame it within a scaffold, was, what difference can you make? What difference is your research, this study, doing? And I said, well, what difference can you make? She said, well, I can't. I've not got this mega budget. I've not got all this, you know, help. I can't change the shifts. I can't change what I do. I'm just a trainee nurse on a ward. I said, what are you doing that for? And she said, well, I like to speak to the patients and make a difference. I said, so where can you make your difference? You know, and it's just being nice to people, isn't it? And saying, and she can talk to them then about her understanding of why patient waiting times are so long post-COVID, and help the people she's working with on a day-to-day basis, interacting with them to make a big difference to them, even if it's just take them some water or a brew while they're sat in the waiting room, you know, or on a corridor, probably really not all the waiting rooms are full. That's the reason for the study. So yeah, but so I think it's about making a difference for me, John. So that was a really long-winded answer, wasn't it?
That's absolutely perfect. That was fantastic. No, thanks. And so we had a little chat about your journey and how you kind of got into research, and what kind of motivated you to start researching when you would start with your PhD research and things like that. And you told us a bit of the story behind that. So I think people would love to hear that, and what you studied and things like that.
So my doctorate, way before I started it, I was always, when I was in schools, we could not get STEM teachers for love nor money, right? Anyone to teach maths, any of the tough sciences, you know, some of the engineering subjects, the hard tech subjects, we just couldn't get qualified teachers. So it set me thinking, as even when I was way back in school then, you know, well, why can't we? What is it that's turning people off from studying these subjects post-compulsory schooling, you know, that we're not able to get a really good pipeline of talent coming through who will come back into the classroom to teach the next generation. So when I was looking at starting a doctoral study, you know, that was still in my head from years before. And I think the thing that made you smile, John, was, you know, what is it? Because basically, you're in a secondary school, you're in a tough area, right? Which subjects is it the kids absolutely hate? They hate maths, don't they? Right? I don't know why it is with maths. You know, people will openly say they're no good at maths. You don't get people openly saying they can't write or they can't read. There's a stigma around that, but people will be open and say, oh, I can't do maths, and that's acceptable. So kids hate it generally. Not many love it. So why on earth? And secondary schools are tough. You know, they're tough places to work. And so the question that I formed really was, why on earth would anyone in their right mind want to train to teach a subject to go into secondary school that all the kids actually hate? What is it that actually motivates somebody to be that dedicated to do that? And that's where my sort of question came from. And I, very naively, when I started, I thought I'd come up with a STEM curriculum. I'd have some kind of integrated design, again, solving a problem, you know. And I thought, yeah, we'll have this and we'll have that, and it'll all work brilliantly, and it'll form part of the national curriculum, and this will be great. My study ended up being nothing like that at all. Nothing to do with the actual subject. When I started to research, I just probably assumed that the people who wanted to train to teach maths actually enjoyed maths when they were in school. Nope, no, they didn't. Some of them were going to be there to make a difference because they'd had such a terrible time. They wanted to be the catalyst for change. So that was nice and refreshing to find out. And, you know, and that started me off on then, well, okay, you've had a horrific time in your own school experience as a pupil. What, you know, you want to come in to train to teach so you can make a difference with the children. You know, what is it that's made you in yourself, in your personality, in your identity, that the meaning you've assigned to your experience as a child in a school that's been different than every other adult who just wants to run a mile from it. So my study ended up being and becoming more around identity development and teacher identity in particular than what I thought it was going to be, because I did think it was going to be around a curriculum development thing. So all of my, and this is a word of warning to people doing a doctorate, you know, don't go mad too much in your literature review at the start before you do your data and your research, and actually you get, if you start with a pilot study, because had I gone down the route of doing lots of research on curriculum design and STEM and things, it wouldn't have been useless and wasted because I would have learned something from it. But in terms of my PhD and my thesis, it would have been a lot of wasted time because I actually ended up having to go down the route of, you know, Bandura and looking at identity development. I also obviously changed my method, my approach, my methodology, and the methods that I was using. Which is why Lancashire is so great as well. So originally I had Malcolm, Professor Malcolm Tite, as my supervisor because he's very STEM based. But obviously once we realised it wasn't going to go down that route, they did it without, I mean, Professor Tite might have been bored of me, he might not want to use it on my team, but I was able to move over to Professor Paul Ashwin, and I was thinking about doing phenomenology. Or was it phenomenography? No, it's phenomenography. Sorry there. Not a bad idea. So, which Paul's knows quite a lot about. But then when I got into it and I started to look at the literature and the methodology around assigning meaning to experiences that you had, it really fitted with the Chicago school style of thinking. And I came upon symbolic interactionism. So one thing I love about the Lancaster approach is you do the 2 years and then you do your conversion document and then you sort of left to fly. So in the 2 years, I'd been through that many different methods and approaches and lenses to look at research that I knew which ones would and wouldn't work. So when I came across symbolic interactionism, it just all seemed to click and it fitted. And then I obviously discovered the grounded theory, which isn't a theory. You're not generating theory per se, it's a method. But that fitted really, really well with the work of, you know, Glaser and Strauss, and then obviously the later stuff by Charmes. So it all just sort of dropped. And from struggling, probably, I want to say 12 months, might have been more, when it clicked, you know, and I just seemed to be going around in circles for a long time. It felt to me like a long time, but Paul was telling me it wasn't a long time, you know. I was but it was just it just clicked, and it was really great. And then once I got my data, then I could really start. And the grounded approach worked well for me because I was able to do a pilot study. I was able to do the data, you know, concurrently gathering it. So I'd gather some data, a little bit of analysis, see where I needed the study to go, take that data, shape, and then use snowball sampling to find some new participants, but also be able to go back to some of them that I'd already worked with, you know. And luckily, and this is a top tip as well, don't make your ethics too narrow. Get your ethics, when you get your consent, make it as broad as you possibly can. You know, so don't say I'm just going to interview people who are training to teach. Fortunately, I was given that advice by my supervisor. So I did mine for anyone who was training to teach, thinking about it, on a course, up to 5 or 6 years into the job. And it's so good that I did, because then I was able to go and interview different cohorts and groups, which if I'd made it too narrow in the first place, I would have found myself being stalled and having to go back to get an amendment to my consent. And the other thing as well is to try and leave it open for that length of time, because you think, well, there'll be a trainee teacher, I'll give them 3 years, you know, I'll just do it for that period of time. When your study actually then ends up being 6 or 8, or not unusual to be 10, you know, if you still want to go back to interview those people and they've been teaching for a couple of years, which may be valid for you, and actually it could really bring you some rich data, if you haven't got the right sort of level of consent and ethics in the first place. So as I go through, I'll try to think of things, John, that, you know, where I could have accidentally, inadvertently tripped myself up on many occasions. But yeah, ethics, yeah, make sure you get it as broad as you possibly can. Yeah, so no. So yeah, another question. Sorry, I go on a bit there.
Yeah, no, I think I know some great information in there, Dawn, particularly for some of us who are, you know, I'm just starting my confirmation document myself and kind of going through it and you know, rattling my brains about how I'm going to approach things. So it's really nice to hear that approach to research.
You've been into the rooms, haven't you, where they have them all bound, the big red books with the gold
not
on?
Yet, no.
Right, so opposite where Alison, and this is, sorry if you're not from Lancaster, but opposite Alison Sedgwick's office is a big room. Well, it used to be there, big, and you can go in and ask the admin ladies, because they are amazing, who's got a thesis that may or may not align to yours. Go in and just pick it up. You can book them out and read them, you know, flick through them. They're great for formatting. They're great to see if you can or should or shouldn't put diagrams in. They're great for if it's aligned to yours, for some literature, you know, you can read it. And obviously as well, because Lancaster, ex-Lancaster, get in touch with them, have a chat. You know, people always love to talk about the research, you know, they really do. And that's one thing I didn't realise when I first started on this journey. You know, people are flattered, aren't they? You know, if you actually get in touch with them on LinkedIn or something, saying, oh, I've read your paper, you know, could you help, you know, tell me this? And they love it. You know, you might think they're I mean, I've got a story around that really. So when I was back in school and obviously teaching D&T, you know, when I started at Edge Hill and I was training teachers, and I got invited to write this chapter for this woman called Gwyneth Owen Jackson, and she did all the D&T books for the Open University, and I'd quoted her, you know, when I was a student training to teach. And I'm there, and I've been telling my students, like, this is the literature, so the reading lists, this lady's books are on here. And then, of course, you get invited and you're writing a chapter and you're like, how's this happened? How has this happened? And then the other thing you suddenly realise is, oh, hang on, she's been the editor. She hasn't. So everyone who's quoting, you know, and I've been going along with it because I didn't know anything about citations really, where it's saying, you know, Owen Jackson, it's actually somebody in Owen Jackson. And it's only when you've got a chapter in the book that becomes important all of a sudden. Up to that point, you've not really thought about it before, you know. So that's nice as well to meet your heroes, you know. And if you start to network early on, you're also you can find, as long as you haven't published with them and you don't know them too closely, but you can start to find and work out who it is you want to come to examine your thesis, you know. You want someone who's really, really good, renowned in the field, but doesn't necessarily have an axe to grind. You know, they're so established. I mean, I knew who I wanted from day one. And she's an amazing lady, Professor Stephanie Atkinson, OBE. It's all she does. You don't need to say anything else, do you? She's a stickler, but she's brilliant. She was the first female woodwork teacher in England, in the UK. And I thought she'd just be amazing. And she's still working up at Sunderland University, you know, sort of part-time, looking after their international masters program, I think. But she was just great. And you know, I wanted to catch her before she disappeared off and retired. But she was brilliant. So if she said anything, I would utterly, completely respect and agree with what she said, you know, with any changes and things like that. And if she says your work's good, then you know it is. You know, so be reaching out to people early on, you get some really great contacts. You start that networking. You can find some great people to support you with your work, and then, you know, that just opens the doors, you know, to different things. I mean, once I got my doctorate, wow, the number of things I was invited to, you know, it's great. And now I'm a professor. Look at me, here I am, I get invited to this. Come and talk to you guys, you know. Still can't quite believe that, you know, it doesn't feel real.
Oh, it's brilliant though. It's great.
Yeah.
So one of the things actually that I wanted to approach with you as well, because again we had a pre-chat, so there's a couple of things that I know I want to talk to Dawne about is openness and things like that in research, and particularly the National Teaching Repository. I can see a couple of people in here who I've seen interacted with it. I've interacted with it myself. And I've seen other people in the calls stuff, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think it's really, really cool, because I'm all about openness in education and things. So yeah.
You just cut me off when I go off on one, because this is like
it's fine.
You know, I have a daughter, she's 21, and I have my little dog Jasmine, she's 16 and very old, but this is my like third child is this National Teaching Repository. So this is an example of how you're disseminating something and it can just snowball into completely something else that you weren't expecting. So I'd gone to, well, obviously learning and teaching, SOTL, Scholarship of Learning and Teaching. There's two schools of thought, okay? Is it proper research? You know, so we've got research as we've been doing on our doctoral studies with lots, but is research around teaching and learning? It's not proper research, really, is it? You know, why are we doing it? So that having the courage to teach and be a teacher in higher education and a lecturer, rather than going down the research route. And it's only very recently that the majority of universities now have 2 or 3 tracks for progression. So up until a few years ago, I think it's 4 or 5 years ago, Edghill only had the research track, and now they've introduced knowledge exchange one and a teaching and learning pathway, which is how I managed to get my readership. But it's still very much, unless you've got papers and you've got this and you've got that, you can't be recognised for the work that you're doing with your students in the classroom. So some work I've been doing at Edghill, and I will get to the openness in a second, John, so bear with me. So the work I've been doing at Edghill, I was working with lots of people who were doing teaching and learning, and great stuff. Honestly, the students were getting first-class honours degrees. They're all going out with graduate employment. Wonderful. But at the end of the day, they had nothing when it was performance review time to someone to say, well, where's your research paper? And they hadn't done any research in that way. Everything was classroom focused. And I thought, well, that's really quite unfair, because they're doing an awful lot of work. They're making a huge difference to students. There's clearly scholarship there. but they've nothing really to show for it. And it had at the same time another piece of work at Edge Hill that I was doing around sharing good practice. So we had a big dusty directory that was all of the validations and external examiner comments and things that was meant to try to share good practice across the institution. So because of that, I'd set up a blog at Edge Hill so people could put all this good practice into a nice safe space, and people could get in touch with each other if they wanted to find out about that piece of work that someone was doing in health that might be transferable over into Faculty of Arts and Science to improve their teaching and learning. So it was very teaching and learning focused. So that was going really quite well. And then I had two wonderful ladies who were brilliant, Gillian Pye and Sue Williams, and they used to run a course at Edge Hill called TLMP, Teaching, Learning, Mentoring, Practice. And it was for a fantastic course. When people training to teach hadn't passed their skills tests, rather than not being able to start a programme, this course they could go on to. And then when they got skills tests later on, they transferred them onto a QTS version of the course. What they did was they had some brilliant work. It got taken by the university because it was so good and converted into a university getting started programme, which is like Uniskills is now. Okay. But when one of them, Sue, came to me wanting some evidence for her senior fellowship of the Higher Education Academy, you know, she'd moving up from the D2 one, the fellowship one that you get with your PG cert. She had no evidence of the impact of her practice. And it was like, well, but you've done all this stuff. So we put very quickly what she'd done on the blog. And then I could track through the Jetpack statistics on the WordPress site, the interactions that she'd had. So we could very quickly got people contacting her about the Getting Started programme and how she'd done it and where it had come from. So about a year or so later, I've got lots of people at Edge Hill all coming to get the Jetpack statistics for evidence of how many times, which peak times, who'd contacted them, how they'd help people to develop learning and teaching practice at Edge Hill. So that went really, really well. Loads of people getting fellowship, senior fellowship, internal promotions, you know, because they had the evidence of the impact of their practice. And then I went to Advanced HE conference and I was disseminating some research, right? Hadn't really thought about sharing the blog at all, but I did a great big sketch note thing. It was brilliant. There I am at Advanced HE doing this thing about the student journey, whatever. And I just happened to mention to someone about this blog, how you can get evidence of the impact of the practice. Oh my God. Oh, I was just overwhelmed, honestly, inundated. And I mean, as you can imagine, John, I've given some really, really good high quality presentations in my time, you know, over the years. But this one, honestly, afterwards, I was just contacted. Can we put our learning and teaching practice, our resources, our research, our slides, you know, our worksheets and things, can we put them onto your blog site? And I thought, well, not really, you know, because it's obviously internal to Edge Hill. So it got me thinking, well, there's clearly a need for this. You know, I've never had as many people, never been as popular at a conference, put it that way. So I got in touch with Advanced HE and I managed to get a small good practice grant from them, which set up the repository, which is still housed at Edge Hill University. Thank you very much. The guy there, Liam Bullingham, who's the technical director, he set it up and it's using a platform called Figshare. So it's Figshare, but housed very securely then behind within Edge Hill University. So it's got like a double layer of security. And what this platform does is anyone, anywhere in the world, I mean, I thought I was being grand calling it the National Teaching Repository, to be fair, when I set it up. I just needed to use my graphic design skills. But now I have people from, someone just the other day from Utrecht getting in touch, well, can I put my stuff on it, or is it just national for the UK? And I'm thinking, oh, you know, but anyway, it's, you can, anyone, anywhere in the world can upload anything. And the beauty about the platform is it'll take videos, audio, posters, infographics, reports, data, slides. What happens is you hit the submit button, comes in, you can put your Twitter handle on if you want, your institution details, a little space for like an abstract, so it people can see very quickly whether it would be of any use for them or not. You can put stuff in there about the context that you've used it in. You can upload it with your own level of Creative Commons licensing. So you can pick and choose that, whether you want people to be able to just share and share alike, or just to be able to take it, not do anything with it and use it, or they can adapt it. That's entirely your choice. All of the work uploaded remains your academic and intellectual property at all times. And it's completely open source, like you say, an open educational resource. It started in, so what are we now? It's probably about 3 years old now, maybe coming up to 3 years old this September. I think we're coming up to about 500,000 views, downloads, visits. It's attracting, this bizarre to me, over 50% every week is from the States. It's getting about 16,000 hits a month, something like that. So it's a good couple of thousand, 3,000 a week, people across the globe coming to the site to access the highest quality teaching and learning, research and resources. So the reason I think it's been so successful is because it's completely free. It's really safe and secure to put your stuff up there. When you upload it, we have like a team. I mean, I've got so many people now involved with it. It's great. You know, started off with like a lovely handful of people just who were supportive of my crazy idea, and then curators and directors. And what happens? It comes in, you work, and people aren't there to judge, right? But they're there just to check it's ethically sound, checking it's as good as it can be, helping you with keywords, making sure it's, you've not left the PDF bit on so the title reads nicely. If it's just uploaded as a Word document, probably putting a little cover on it because Figshare picks up a little picture. And then what it does once it's up there is we'll tweet about it if you want us to, or we can put it into LinkedIn just to tag you in, and then you can retweet. But the system itself, as well as being completely able to take all of these different formats, is it generates a citation so that people can actually acknowledge your work when they use it and draw from it. So it gives you that academic protection for your intellectual property, and they can cite it. But the other bit of it is Figshare platform is it has this altmetric data, so you can then see how many times people have downloaded it, how many times people have viewed it. You can have a look at where in the world that's taken place. It links into Mendeley and all those different things, Twitter feeds. So anything, when people have come to me over the past few years, anytime someone said, oh, well, I'm not allowed to upload the resources because they don't belong to me, they're the universities, it's their resources. Well, we manage ways around that as well. So you can put a link on to a piece of work, but then takes you back to that site. So you could get traffic in a roundabout way. Some people put their own websites on it. So Ruth Healy & Co, they've got a website, a link on the National Teaching Repository to the websites for the Healys. Professor Simon Thompson, his used to go direct back to Liverpool, and I think there's an example still on there. So he was directing traffic back to their Centre for Excellence. It doesn't matter, whatever challenge you may think you have with your sharing or you're worried about it, just give me a shout, we'll get in touch and we can do something very low key. But probably, I've got loads of great examples, but Dr. Lee Fallon over at Hull, he'd got this fantastic poster that's a diversity, working with learners with diverse needs, and it's a visual poster that says, don't use this font, use this colour, do this, do that. And we were on the LT chat, that happens on a Wednesday night. I don't know whether you've ever come across that. If you haven't, Wednesday night, 8 till 9, it's really good. #LTHE chat. He was on there, and some people were talking about this. They need some support, and he said, I've got this poster, and he'd had this poster kicking about for about 3 or 4 years. Anyway, someone said, stick it on the repository. Oh my goodness me, he must be on about 5,000 or 6,000 views now just on that. So for him to get the evidence of the impact of one piece of work that he can then use, and anyone can then use for promotions, internal, external, senior fellowships, principal fellowships, even going for things like Kate Awards and National Teaching Fellowship Scheme Awards through Advanced HE. It's really great, a nice way for you to get that recognition of your practice that gets the metrics and the data that you can then use for yourself to help yourself be recognised for the wonderful work that you do around learning and teaching. And the real reason we set it up in the first place is you're helping somebody else with a brilliant resource that they can access anywhere in the world. I did a coffee morning for the guys in Ukraine before Christmas for Advanced HE, and we've had 2 invitations to write reports for UNESCO, because again, unbeknown to me, there's 120, it's been accessed and used by 127 countries, and of those, 20% of those are, as UNESCO define, the lesser developed countries. So we're really managing to get great resources into places and spaces that probably wouldn't, you know, so everybody's a winner, you know, I think. So I did tell you I would go on a bit there. Not even pause for breath, have I? Yeah. But I love my National Teaching Repository. Yeah, but it's and that I couldn't have done it without all of the help and the friends and colleagues and that who've believed in it and uploading great stuff all of the time. So if anyone wants to help and become a curator or a critical friend, you know, just get in touch. Nothing's a closed shop, you know. It's all just about trying to make a difference. And you know, yeah, I like it.
I really like it too. That's why I asked you about it. It's fantastic. I think it's a great piece of work. It shows kind of that openness and different approaches to research as well. Because I think I'm probably going to talk a little bit too long. I think we often see research as producing a big paper or something like that, but actually some of those tangible outputs of research are the things that you do every day, and you know, the things that you do in the classroom that are informed by research. And actually, if you can share them in a more friendly way than an impenetrable paper. I think I shared some on Twitter the other day about impenetrable titles of papers, and then how a supervisor can say to you, you know, write more clearly, and then they'll write a title that's, you know, the effects of the effect of this effectiveness. So,
it's a nice place as well to start in a safe space. It's non-judgmental, and with a small piece of work that then you can build and grow on. So we've started to get to the point now where things that are on the repository that may be classed traditional, well, it might be called grey literature. It probably is grey literature, isn't it? But it can be then cited by other people into other reports. So I think we've had a couple of things cited in a JISC report recently. I know there's something someone found in a book the other day. They've cited the repository and some of the work that's there. So I think as it grows, you know, it's only in its infancy, and I'm open to any ideas to, you know, how to manage it, how to grow it further or bigger or better, you know, because this is just like a mad idea that literally, as I say, stemmed from my frustration of people doing fantastic work and then not being able to evidence the impact of that for something as simple as a senior fellowship application, you know. And it's a lot of what you do in the classroom, it's hidden, isn't it? The minute you leave, you've had a great session and a lesson with people, the minute you're out the door, it's gone and lost. Whereas the other guys who were over there, you know, writing a paper or putting a journal article together and stuff, it's there, you know, physically. In fact, I've got a chapter in this book, because obviously, for those of you who don't know, I've been locked out of my big PC here, so I'm on a laptop today, and I've got it balanced on a book, and I've got a chapter in this book, and it's probably the most useful it's been. So that I won't tell you which book it is. No. But do you know what I mean? It's really useful. I like to make things useful, and again, that probably comes back from my background of being the, you know, the designy, technology, engineering person. So yeah. No, but that's a good question, that, John.
Yeah, no, it's really nice to see you're passionate about it as well. And so we have about 15 minutes.
I think probably more than passionate. I think
it's great. No, it's amazing. We've got about 15 minutes, and actually, we just wanted to welcome, see if anybody wants to ask any questions, or if anybody who's on the call wants to turn the camera on and ask anything of Dawne about the research, about the NTR, about anything else. It's usually where it goes deathly quiet.
I mean, while people are thinking, there's a couple of decent links on the chat there to your repository, Dawne. So Yeah,
touch this, should I?
Sue and Deborah are almost exactly the same time. Put some links in.
You see. They're two of my little, they're just amazing colleagues and friends, and we just, I think we just pull each other through. So, but both are on as doctoral students at. Look at them! See, Deb's on that. We do. I think having a good network actually of peers, and people you can draw upon, and just have that Friday catch up. Sometimes we have Friday catch ups, and we just like put the world to rights. And it may or may not be about research or work or something like that, but finding your tribe, finding a group of like-minded people who rally around and support any ideas that you have. I mean, it's I think Debs is on the LT chat tonight, I think. And obviously Sue is a co-founder of the LT HE chat. And that's a great way to get impact of your practice as well. So if you had 6 burning questions you'd like to ask lots of different colleagues who work in and across higher education, get in touch with Sue. So much she's saying there, there's a little smiley face from Deb. Because that's a great way. I mean, Sue did something for Advanced HE the other week, and the number of colleagues who've engaged with that as a mechanism, and it's raised their profile, helped them to get networks, sharing their ideas, getting new ideas off other colleagues, and the list that she had of people who've got promotions and national teaching fellowships and things through their engagement. And I'm one as well. My work on the LTHE chat was a big chunk of my national teaching fellowship application, successful claim, I should say, for the work that I did, because I was able then to mentor other people and stuff. I mean, I dropped lucky when I was doing it with Natalie from the University of Glasgow, because COVID hit, so we were able to run a week-long chat, and people were just going mad needing resources. So that was really good actually, to be able to help people at that time. Yeah, so I can definitely recommend that as well.
That's amazing. So does anybody have any questions or anything? I can see Debs is typing. But yeah, no, unless there are any other questions, I think we can bring things to a close. Oh, Deb.
Oh.
Can I ask one while Deborah's typing? Is that okay? I don't know whether you're going to answer this from something about the sort of problems you've encountered, or if it's something methodological, I don't know. But if you could, in all your experience and all these different settings that you've worked in, if you could draw, say, everyone's attention to something that's problematic, if you could just sort of click your fingers, wave a magic wand and say, look, everybody needs to know that. Is there anything that you'd draw our attention to?
I think first thing that springs to mind that everybody will have the same issue and challenge and problem with is the notion of time. And it's actually the only thing that we've all got that's exactly the same, because time is time, isn't it? And I think everybody's planning it and getting the support of your family. I don't know if this is actually going to answer your question, but making sure you've got the support of people around you for when times are tough and your writing isn't going as it should, and you're actually there. And more often than not, spending quite a chunk of money to be doing this study, and your children maybe wanting to go out on holiday or go out for a day out, and you've got this thing to write and report. So I think managing your time and having a group of people around you who are supportive, and is absolutely crucial, because I could not have done it without, people just taking my daughter Jen out for even an afternoon or a morning while I managed to try and get something done. Having that support, I think, but the time is the one that you've got to, because something else will always come across. I mean, it's funny because obviously Pooey and I, she sent me something about procrastination, because I think that's linked to time, isn't it? We can all. Yeah. I mean, I've had the tidiest house in Wigan when I was doing my doctorate for 6 years solid. There's nobody in Wigan had a tidier house than me. So you've got to find what your kryptonite is really, and try just to quash it and keep it in a box. So yeah, I'll probably have a think of that. I might sleep on it and come up with a really, really even better answer.
I don't know.
tomorrow.
I think that is incredibly insightful. It's the most precious commodity that we've got. Well, it's not a commodity. It's the most precious aspect of our lives, isn't it? Really, we can't buy it. We can't exchange it for something else. It's incredibly important. And Deborah's asked an insightful. Sorry, Deborah, if it felt like I was speaking over you there. Deborah's asked any advice for how to keep motivated on the journey.
Just believe you can do it. Visualize yourself at that graduation. And Lancaster does have awesome robes. You know, it's got to be the best colours ever. You know, and visualize that day. You know, you've got a proper floppy hat. You're looking amazing. Lancaster's an awesome campus. You'll be in that great hall. Imagine your friends and your family. You know, the meal that you're going to have afterwards. You know that you can do it. And I think to get there, to get motivated, is really chunk things down. Because it's so easy to be swamped, isn't it, and get overwhelmed, and just make your study too big. Really focusing in on your research question and chunking it and saying, right, by the end of this week I am going to do this. I'll get this one more, look at Deb laughing, this one interview done, and then next week I'll do another interview, and then I'm going to have this chunk of time just to analyze it. And it's great to do an interview and then analyze, and that's why grounded theory for me worked so well, because obviously I could do that legitimately, and I could be walking. And here's a top tip: take a phone with you with a voice recording app on it, or a pad and a pen or something with you when you're out walking around the park with your dog, because you can be stuck for weeks and not have an idea, get nowhere, and all of a sudden it somehow frees your mind. You're walking in the middle of nowhere and all this stuff starts to flow into your head, and you're thinking, oh my God, I need to write this down. I mean, one of my outcomes of original contributions to knowledge was self-sabotaging behaviours that teachers engage in when they're sabotaging their own identity development. And that came to me when I was in the park. And I was literally, people must have thought I was crackers. I was walking up with sabotaging behaviours, self-sabotaging behaviours. Because I thought, if I don't get it written down, it'll go out of my head and I'll forget what the way I got to that as an idea, as a notion. Because when I literally got in the house and I started scribbling the damn stuff down. But yeah, so time, and what's Jennifer typed there? That's how I kept my research question while walking the dog. Yeah, there's a good idea. Get yourself a dog. If you don't have one, they're really useful, and a pad and a pen. But yeah, does that help, Deb? With the motivation? But like-minded people, just having a chat, knowing you're not on your own. Everybody goes through it. I mean, my cohort, oh my goodness me, we had people coming in. I was cohort 16. We had people coming in from different cohorts, in and out. We'd always welcome them. It was nice to hear their stories. And don't be too hard on yourself, and judge yourself. You might think you're going to do it in 4 years flat, but if it gets to 6, 8, whatever years, if you take a break in your study, that's fine. That's why the peer support at Lancaster is so good. And you're in you're swimming in your own lane. It's lovely when we had Amal Abu Seta was the first out of my cohort, University of America in Cairo, but somewhere over there in Egypt, university, great, and she was just brilliant from day one. Well, she did hers in 4 years flat, and you're really pleased for them, but God, you feel sick, don't you? When someone from your cohort gets it and you're going, oh God, I'm only through conversion. And then someone else from your cohort, and you like that, going, oh, I'm so pleased for them, but you really got to you just got to swim in your own stream, in your own lane. That's it. It's your journey. I mean, we had on my cohort so many people with, challenges with family and kids and friends, and there were people getting divorced and people splitting up, and people everything life will throw at you when you're doing your doctorate. But just keep motivated that you can do this. You've got this, and you'll get there, and just visualize that end where it's the nice day and all the nice gifts that people will buy you. Deb sent me a lovely mug. It's in my, I've got it. I won't get up and get it, but it's there, and I don't want to use it because it's nice, but it says like professor on it and superpower, so I think, yeah, and just believing you can do it, and you can. If I can get the, if I can do it, anybody can do it, really. But yeah, but ask for help. Oh, and get a list of criteria as well. That's a good top tip. So if you want to be a prof, or you're even thinking about being an associate prof, find lots of criteria from different institutions and start now to tick things off, not just to tick it off without doing it with meaning and depth and feeling and making a difference. But, you know, if part of your institutional criteria says you need externality, you know, well, how can you do that? Oh, I could be an external examiner. Well, if you're not an external examiner now and you need it and you need a couple of years experience, start yourself on that journey. You know, if it says journal article or book chapter or editorship, try and get onto some different boards and groups and networks, you know, just to build your indicators of esteem. So yeah, but keep motivated. That's it. You've got this.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dawne, for your time. And thank you very much to everyone who came along today. I think you'll join me in doing a virtual round of applause for Dawne.